Hello and welcome back to a mindful moment. How are you, Melissa?
I'm hot.
It is a little warm.
It's hot. How are you doing?
Good, the same. The weather is kind of shocking. I was watching this morning and like Texas is having massive flooding and Florida's flooding and we're going to be 113 here today. And I'm like, wow, okay.
It's
And
crazy.
it's just, I mean, I know everybody's going through this, but it's still just kind of shocking. But anyway, weather aside, everything else is good. So we talking about parenting today, mindful parenting, and thought, and not that I'm not a parent, but obviously I don't have the parenting issues, that many people have. And I was actually shocked because I had no idea about this, but the Surgeon General, Dr. Vivek Murthy, issued an advisory that parental stress is an urgent public health issue just a couple of days ago, which I know parents are stressed from my friends that are parents and have kids at home, but I had no idea it had reached that level of stress. There's a great financial strain now,
Oh, I
right?
totally see that. Yeah, 100%.
Between the cost of everything is high, but childcare has skyrocketed. And at the same time, it's something like 10% of the workers in childcare have left. And then many childcare centers have closed because of liability issues or insurance costs. So there's an actual childcare crisis right now across the country because there's not enough caregivers to take care of the number of kids that need it. There's much greater concerns about children's health and safety.
Mhm.
So, and I didn't think of this again because I don't have kids at home anymore, but it was 75 or 78% of parents are consistently stressed and worried about things like school shootings. So their kids go off to school. Would never have had to think of
No.
something like that,
Well, there was just a shooting yesterday again.
Yep. Yeah, horrible. Then there's the loneliness factor, which that is new because my social life revolved around being a parent when you were younger, right?
Yeah.
I was friends with other parents, all the kids got together. Now, what's happening? Well, first of all, loneliness is a health concern in general, right? We know it really negatively impacts health. But parents are really reporting tremendous loneliness, like 55% or something of parents report that they're feeling lonely. And it's because they are so stretched for time, they have to cut something. So they're cutting social time, leisure time, and sleep time. So they're not interacting with other people. Single parents, it's like 77% are experiencing loneliness. And then the other thing that's really changed, and I know you've experienced this, but your kids are a little bit older, but there is the social media and technology problem.
Yeah.
And those we know now, can really lead to great increases in children suffering from depression or other mental health issues. There's cyberbullying, there's all these things happening that it's fairly new.
Yeah.
So historically, I'm not history, long time, but say since 1955 or something like that, the amount of time has greatly increased for mothers in the workforce, right? So, before 1955, most moms were stay-at-home moms and dads
Yeah.
went to work.
Mhm.
So it's gone up about almost 30% for women, but men, the time they now spend with children has gone up 154%. So it's good news that fathers are spending more time with their kids, but it means now both parents are just stressed to the max all the time,
Yeah. Yeah.
trying to figure out how to cover all of this, which is kind of just crazy, right?
That is crazy. Even though my kids are older now, I have a son who's a junior in high school and my daughter's in college. She's a sophomore, but cell phones came out. When was the first iPhone? Like
2007, I think.
2007?
Yeah.
So they were babies. And this wasn't yet the
Yeah.
society where we just handed our kid a device to keep them distracted. I don't think my kids ever even touched a phone until, gosh, they must have been 8. I mean, it wasn't super young like it is now. And even
Yeah.
8 is young, but they never had their own phone until they were in junior high, I think was when they first got their phones. And even then, social media wasn't this behemoth that it is now.
Yeah.
And they never even had social accounts until they were teenagers. And I'm thinking sophomores in high school, they weren't even allowed to have TikTok or Instagram or anything. But I can still see, just in that short period of time of them having it, the detrimental effect that it has on them. And so, for these parents that are giving their kids the devices at such a young age and allowing them to have social media accounts at such a young age, I cannot even fathom the kind of stress that a parent must go through because of all of the dangers of social media and what it can do to your kids.
I guess we could just say overall, it has changed. Even so, we're, two different generations,
Yeah.
but now just your generation and the one below you are going through this
Hmm.
where parenting is causing so much stress. Like something like 48%, 40 something percent of parents reported being so stressed out on a consistent basis that they couldn't function. It's
You know,
just too much pressure all the time.
it makes me think too, when you were talking about loneliness, when my kids were young and when I was young, we weren't home. We played outside. If the kids were playing outside, all of the parents in the neighborhood were outside socializing
Right.
with each
Right.
other, having parties, hanging out. I don't see any of that
No,
anymore. Not a
no.
single family on my street. And there's younger kids on the street.
Yeah.
It's families have transitioned in and out. So now there's younger kids again. And you don't see them outside.
Yeah.
They're not playing outside. And so think of the stress as a parent. Like, I know it's a different kind of stress because when I was young, it was like, just come out, come home when the lights turn on. So I'm sure there was some element of stress, like, I hope my kid's okay.
Yeah.
But now it's almost, we have too much access to our kids, I feel like, right? We know every single thing they're doing at every time of the day. We can even see how fast they're driving in a car if we want to. Like,
Yeah.
it's almost too much, like
Oh, yeah.
information overload. We're seeing so much, it's probably even more stressful. So I think now that these kids they're not playing outside, so they're home with the parents. They're probably holed up in their room where the parents have no idea what they're doing, what kind of, devices they're using, what websites they're visiting, what games they're playing. But trying to, figure out, is this okay for my kid? Do I need to do something about this? They're so isolated. Do I need to, sign them up for this, sign them up for that? And then on top of that, you have all of the, stuff with college now. It's so hard to get into college, and education has gotten so much worse as far as like kids are not engaged anymore. So now these parents have the responsibility again to try to get the kids more engaged in what they're doing. It's a lot.
Yeah. I really do have so much empathy. I had breakfast with one of my friends who has kids at home, and her husband works from home and he has a pretty flexible schedule. So she has a regular, like, 9 to 5 job in a hospital.
Mhm.
So he does the normal running around. The kids don't start school at the same time, they don't get off at the same time. Their extracurricular activities are, different times. And so something had happened just recently where he needed her to do it. So she stayed home. She took the day off from work to stay home to make sure she could get all the kids wherever they had to go. And she said it was 8 car trips in one day. Drop one off, then drop the other one off, and then pick one up, and then pick up the other one, and then drop one off. You know what I mean? And it was like, okay, so if you just consider time, because time is one of our biggest stressors,
Yeah.
money and time. And if you've got kids, you're being impacted horrifically by both. But the amount of time it has to take to monitor like what your kids are doing, where they are, how fast they're going in the car, that's in addition to the stress that builds, it's the time it's taking,
Oh
right?
yeah. Oh
And
yeah.
then the concern about how are you going to pick up one at noon and one at 3 o'clock if you have a job? Or, I have a client who she can't do anything anymore before, 9 in the morning because she's got 2 kids to get to 2 different places before she can go to work. And then she has to leave. And I know several people that do this. They take their lunch break at 2 o'clock
Hmm.
so that they can go race out of their offices or the hospitals or wherever they are, pick up the kids, and then they've got to get them somewhere. And if they're young, that's where the next stressor comes. There's not enough childcare.
Yeah.
What in the world? That's just crazy. So I was really giving this some thought and reading again the Surgeon General's report. And basically, it's not a familial problem. The family can't fix this.
Yeah.
It's a societal problem because there's all of this pressure and, our culture of go, go, go. And the vast majority of regular families need 2 incomes to survive just because everything's so expensive.
Or more.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And so you can't fix that. We can't fix the economy individually, like as a family. You can't fix that, right? And the financial strain is really, really serious. It's a quarter, I think it was 25% of single parents reported that multiple times during the last year, they did not even have enough money for basics like food or rent. So
It's
what
horrible.
does that mean? You get another job. Then what do you know what I mean? It's just pressure, pressure, pressure. So you've got the problem of just our culture here in this country, at least. And then you add to that the changes, the kind of changes we need really need to be almost at a government level,
Absolutely, they do.
right? So just like we have protections, individual protections as workers, the corporations aren't going to do this on their own. They're not going to go, oh, hey, we'll provide, I don't know, on-site childcare, or we'll let you off as many times as you need to a day. It doesn't work that way.
Mm.
So the government has to get involved, and our government's not been great lately at getting things done. Corporations are going to have to do something about this. Parents make up a big chunk of the workforce. So it's like you can't just ignore this whole giant section of workers and put all of the stress on them and not provide some kind of support or help. So as I was thinking through all that, it seems impossible. I know it's not. I'm not trying to be negative. I'm sure we can work through it, but probably not in time to help the current parents who are,
Yeah.
suffering right now. And so it basically means, I'm guessing, that parents just feel kind of helpless. They're just kind of running around trying to do everything they have to do. They're clearly not feeling very happy about it. It makes me sad to think they're not getting to fully enjoy their children because there's so much stress.
Yeah.
So if you can't change it, you can't control it, what can you do? And that is kind of where we circle back around to mindfulness, because the only thing that you can do is change your response to the stress, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you can't change what's causing the stress. So how do you change how you react or respond to the stress?
There is that, keeping up with everything, keeping up with everybody else kind of a
Mhm.
mentality. I mean, I know that won't take away, the financial strain that a lot of people are feeling right now, but your kids don't have to do everything. They don't have to be a part of every club. They don't have to be in every sport. They don't have to get straight A's. Like, I think we need to scale back a little bit and kind of reevaluate what makes your family happy. What is the value that you have with your family that really brings you that fulfillment and fills your soul. So, but that doesn't take away the financial part. I mean, that's another huge one, and I get it. I mean, how do we stop reacting to the busyness and just start responding a little bit more?
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting because after the pandemic, a lot of women did not return to the workforce.
Yeah.
And it's because they were already fed up with trying to do everything. You know what I mean? Because it's just too much. Because I can remember even when you guys were young, many times I could not take like a job that was offered because the childcare was going to cost more than what I was going to get paid by the job. So I thought, well, what does it cost now? Because I don't know. Well, the average in the country is over $10,000 a year per child. Now, that is actually more than a state university in most places, right? And in California, it can be up to $19,500 per year per child.
Oh
Now,
my
can you
gosh.
imagine?
No.
You'd have to get $100,000 job to make it worth it by the time the taxes come out, and you know what I mean, just to have that childcare. And I know I tried to do this the whole time you were little. I kept looking for, is there a way I can make money from home? And nowadays, there's probably a lot more opportunities, but back then it meant taking ridiculous gigs. Like when we lived in upstate New York, I was selling Avon and selling Tupperware and part-time managing the townhouse properties we lived in. Like anything I could do, because first, I wanted to spend time with my kids. And secondly, the cost was so ridiculous. It didn't make it worth the stress of going to work. Now the problem is the whopping increases in the cost of everything, including childcare, really make it where you either have to really both, if you're in a two caregiver home, both would have to work, but one is largely working to pay for the childcare,
Yeah. Which
which
is kind
is
of pointless, right? I mean, I went through the same thing when my kids were babies, and it was like, okay, after, taxes and after paying for childcare, the amount of money that I was bringing home, it was like, well, this is pointless. I might as well just stay home
yeah,
and then not
yeah,
pay for the childcare and save money on gas and all of these other things. It just didn't make
right,
sense. And it's hard because then now you're totally shifting an entire workforce too at the same time by
yeah,
forcing people to do that. Basically,
yeah,
guess what? When their kids are grown, it's going to be really hard for them to re-enter the workforce,
yeah.
and they're going to be struggling to pay bills then too. It's like it's our government needs to do something, and I'm
Yeah.
freaking tired of it. That's for sure.
Like I said, it's such a big problem that I think, the only thing that families can, well, there are several things they can do. They could reevaluate their lifestyle or their career or, things like that. But I think too, there are a lot of families that just don't have a choice.
Yeah.
If you're a low income family and you're, struggling to get by, even if you're going to get a little bit of extra money by going to work and most of it's going to go to childcare, it may still be worth
You
it
still have
to
to.
do
Yeah.
that, right? Because
Yep.
they need the money. And when we think about even the long-term effects of this, if parents are stressed, it's going to cause their children to be stressed,
Oh,
right?
absolutely. Your kids will feed off of it.
Yeah. So now you're creating another generation of stressed out people before they've even gotten started. So there's a longer term health issue here. Maybe if we focused on that first, like, how do I get okay with this? How do I live with this? This is going to be individualized based on your circumstances, but practicing mindful parenting it's got several benefits. Probably the two most important are it helps the parent kind of shift their focus and be very present when they are with their children instead of worrying about the other 8,000 pressures on them at that time. And it means that once the parent is calmer and able to make better decisions, be able to spend quality time with the kids, things like that, then now they're modeling that behavior for the kids, which
Hmm.
means the kids will be calmer, right? And then they can make decisions about like how many clubs do you need to belong to, or what do you really want to do, or you know,
Yeah.
I think it could help with the social media problem because if the kids start learning to be mindful, that might help them with cutting back on so much social media and app time and things like that.
Yeah.
It's so funny too because I was thinking TV was the big problem when you were a child.
Yeah.
You guys would have sat in front of the TV all day, like watching cartoons and stuff. But all I had to do was, frankly, walk over. I don't think we even had remotes in the early years. You walk
I
over,
was the remote.
Melissa, change the channel. But it was like, turn it off. And that was the end of it. You didn't have any options as a child to figure out another way to get on a screen. And now kids can access it from anywhere and everywhere. So again, so much of that it's not about the parents, it's about society. And since we can't alter that, I truly believe the only thing we can do, or the first thing to start with, is to change our mindset.
Hmm.
And mindfulness is awareness, it's being present. So just that first little simple step of mindful parenting would mean you're calming your system down and you're modeling something much healthier for the kids. But it also helps manage emotions, right? So
Hmm.
if you practice mindfulness, if you're a mindful parent, you're practicing self regulation, but you're also more aware of your children's emotional state at the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So then you're not reacting. Full disclosure for those that don't know, I did not practice mindfulness when I had children at home. I didn't even know about
Well,
it.
full disclosure, I do practice mindfulness with my kids at home, and I still have moments of, where you snap or but one of the great things that I've learned through mindfulness is that when you're never going to be a perfect parent, no matter what you do. Okay. But when you do slip up or when you do, kind of get after yourself for, oh, I shouldn't have said that, or I shouldn't have yelled, or, whatever it is, being upfront and honest with your children about it. Like, we need to get out of this mindset too about our kids not being humans.
Yeah.
Like, we tend
Yeah.
to think they're these little drones, little robots that we mold into whatever they are. No, they're already who they are. And we can kind of influence some of what they turn out to be later in life. And don't we want that to be a positive thing and not a negative thing, right? So if I can come to my kids and say, hey, I'm really sorry that I yelled at you like that. Had nothing to do with you. I've been doing this, this, and this today, and I just lost my cool, and I really apologize. If you talk to your kids like that, that's teaching them later in life that it's okay to own up to your mistakes. It's okay to talk to people, like that, where you're, on a one-on-one, heart-to-heart. It's okay, and we're all
Yeah.
human and we all make mistakes. And I think that's really helped in my relationship with my kids. But yes, full disclosure, you are going to screw up.
Yeah, because we're human. I mean, we're not perfect. But I think there's such a difference between like your generation when you were children versus kids now, like,
Hmm.
and your kids, for example, because parents are getting smarter about understanding that the old ways, just like at work, right? The old command and control method of managing doesn't work. Well, it's kind of the same with parenting. If you're trying to do a command and control, you do what I say, don't ask questions, go to the corner, whatever's there. Even the whole idea of like, you need a timeout. That's been around now for a while instead of going to a corner, just saying you need a timeout. But now it's really in mindful parenting, it could be the parent that needs the timeout,
Yeah.
right? Because usually, I mean, I know for me, if I was to the point of saying, go to your room or go to the corner, it's because I was emotionally dysregulated.
Mm-hmm.
So now, one of the sort of subtle shifts, but it makes a difference, is one of us or both of us need a timeout,
Yeah.
right? So that it's not constantly shaming the child. It's accepting responsibility for the fact that maybe as the parent, you are having a moment and you need to step back so that you don't snap or bark or whatever. And it's not a matter of discipline. It's discipline is kind of like a weird thing when I think about it when it comes to children. But children have to have boundaries set and you have to hold
Yeah.
them accountable for staying in those boundaries, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's guiding. It's like I don't think anymore at all in terms of, children need discipline, they need guidance.
Yeah.
And if you have a child who you can't guide because maybe they have a problem, then there are now a plethora of support services to help you identify what that is. If we focused more on mindful parenting, we're doing a lot more questioning, a lot more discussions about feelings, a lot more active listening to what our child is telling us. Kids spend so much time in their room or somewhere else on devices. And even if you're trying to track what they're doing, you can't track everything that they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're quiet, or they could have just personality traits that maybe wouldn't alarm you. But typically, if you are interacting in a mindful way, you're going to get more hints about
Mm-hmm.
perhaps behavioral or mental problems. And mental health with young people is at a crisis now too. But I think if we look at it more from, instead of being punitive, if we start out being curious, what's going on with this person, including your own child?
Mm-hmm.
If there's a change in their behavior, if there's too much isolation by the child. So I think mindfulness is the way to address that in order to explore what's going on well before it blows up into something that's going to ruin that child's life or that family's life, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's not hard. It's just shifting our mindset about what does it mean to be a parent. And I do see the correlation with work. So forever, most of my life, managers were the bosses, and they told you what to do and you did it, right? That's the way it worked. And now a lot of language has changed where really managers are considered mentors or coaches.
Mm-hmm.
Coach or mentor someone to help guide them so that they can succeed. And I
Yeah.
think that that's kind of captures what mindful parenting is. It's like you said, you're not trying to mold a human being. You're not going to do very well with that.
No.
But if you take the approach of what can I do to support my child in their
Mm-hmm.
development or in their success or in their mental health,
Yeah.
and recognize that you can't quote fix a
No.
lot of problems kids have right now, but at least you would get cued into, oh, I need to get some help
Yeah.
for
And I
my
want to be
child.
clear too that when we say mindful parenting, I know there's always extremes in
Yeah,
anything, right? So you have the parents that just let their kids do whatever they want. And then you have the parents, like they call them the helicopter parents, right?
yeah,
So when we're talking about mindful parenting and like when you're there to guide your child, not to mold them,
yeah,
like you said earlier, they still need boundaries,
yeah,
right? This isn't just like, oh, go be in the
yeah.
world. No, this is not what that is. This is more like I have my ideas of where I think my child would best
Of course.
follow a path, but that may not be the path that they want. And I'm going to gently nudge. And if I see that this is not the path that they want, then I'm going to support them in the path that they do want. But there are boundaries with everything, and they need structure. They need those
Yes.
boundaries, because if they don't have them, then everything would just be run amok. So that's kind of our role as a mindful parent. That's what it is. It's to model, like you said, to this is the behavior that I'm aiming to achieve, and I hope that you follow what I'm modeling for you. You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
not just like this rigid,
Yep.
this is right, this is wrong, things like that. Like with my kids, when it comes to religion, that may be a touchy subject for some people. I was pretty religious when I was a teenager. I was constantly at church, constantly in youth group. And then the older I got, I just realized that wasn't my path. That wasn't for me. And my kids, I've told them from day one, do you want to go to church? No, not really. Do you want to learn more about it? No, not really. They have a lot of friends that go to church, and that's just what they've chosen not to do. And I'm not going to tell them either way that this is what I believe and this is what I think you should believe,
Yeah.
because they're their own person.
And I can't agree more about the structure. So I do know a couple of parents that their kids are just in way too many activities. They're stressed. The kids are stressed. And they do that because the parents will say things like, well, I just asked them, what do you want to do? And I don't mean it's not important to hear what they're interested in doing, but children's brains are not fully developed. I mean, they're not. So you can't expect them to be able to assess how much of a load they can take, right? Between school and activities and all that kind of thing. So I think your approach is great, where it's, of course, as a parent, you have an idea, right? Of not only of maybe which way you want to sort of nudge them in, but also in realistic expectations,
Mm-hmm.
where kids can't do that. So it's fine to say, what do you want to do, and make a list. And then as the parent, you need to say, okay, but we can only allocate X number of hours a week. So whittle it down. You know what I mean? Like they need that guidance
Yeah.
to make even their own, even small decisions, because boys, especially, I think the latest studies were like male brains aren't actually fully developed until like 21 or 25. I
It's
think it's 25.
25.
Yeah.
25. Yeah.
Okay, 25 years old. So
Yeah. That's
you
out of
can't,
college. If they go to college, that's after college.
yeah. The point is, children need parents. They need parenting, but neither children or parents need parents that are stressed out to the max, half of them so much they
No.
can't function. So I think maybe taking a mindful approach would take some of the pressure off too. That it's okay that maybe you're not fitting in with the cultural norm. Because
Mhm.
if you can find something that works better for your family, do it. Making decisions based on what would best serve everybody involved.
Yeah.
Okay, that includes the parents.
I think again, when we're talking about like the time factor, that time is it's so stretched thin, right? And I feel for the parents, because I know how it feels to be that busy. And we're not spending time with our kids when we're that busy. And that's what we really need, right? We need that time with each other, even if it's just sitting with each other in silence. We need the time. Like some of the options or like maybe ideas that I could offer is, if you are stretched for time, like have your child like nightly just help you with dinner, even if it's just for 5 minutes. Have them set the table, have them do something where they're doing it with you.
Yeah.
Or if
Yeah.
the only time you're getting to spend with your kid is in the car, don't let them be on their device. Have a conversation at that time, and you're going to feel better as a parent because you're actually getting that time and you're going to release some of that guilt that you might be holding on to. I just think that, like you said, it makes my heart hurt that these parents aren't able to really enjoy parenting their kids right now because it's so freaking stressful.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's great advice. It's really easy to fall into the guilt shame trap, right?
Mhm.
Like you don't have your child enrolled in this, or you know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
you keep taking on more and more because you want to be a good parent. And that's kind of how our culture
And you want them to
identifies.
have everything that every other kid
Yeah.
has. And
Yeah.
yeah.
But when you practice mindfulness, again, it includes being self-aware. And so the idea that parents are having to cut out leisure time and social time and sleep time in order to meet all of these high expectations, if you practice mindfulness, because it starts to shift even your neural connections, right, over
Mhm.
time, then I think it gives you a better opportunity to say, oh, I am really feeling lonely. And instead of just suffering through it, it gives you the wherewithal to say to your family, you know what, mom or dad needs a break. I'm going to go out with my friends this weekend instead of going to, 3 baseball games and a concert, whatever it is
Yeah.
for the kids. And okay, it's okay that the kids sometimes don't get every single thing they want to do.
Mhm.
Um, and it's okay for parents to take that break. Oh, the other thing that they're cutting out is time together, the parents. If it's a
Oof.
two-parent family, they're not spending any time together. Well, what's that going to lead to?
Mhm.
Divorce? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like over time, because you're not building the relationship. So, maybe a date night is appropriate and you figure out how frequently, because again, it's going to be individualized. And maybe a date night doesn't mean going anywhere. Maybe it means that's when you tap a friend or a relative to take the kids and you just have a quiet night at home. It
Yeah.
doesn't, whatever works for each individual. But I think without mindfulness, without that awareness, it's just too easy to get caught in the flow of what everybody's doing or what everybody expects you to do. And then if you're unhappy, again, your kids are not going to be happy
No.
because mom or dad is not happy. It disrupts that family core of safety, psychological safety and security and contentment. When we're stressed, that stress response, again, is pulling blood out of the brain, away from the brain. And then you're trying to make decisions. And so you're not making the best decisions when you're in that state. So if you are consistently stressed out, it's really important that you look at, if it's not mindfulness, look at something that's going to reduce your stress.
I want to be clear that there's no judgment either. I mean, if you're
No.
in that space where you are just stretched way too thin and you don't feel like you're parenting to the best of your ability, like that's zero judgment here. We get it. We know how hard it is. So, yeah.
It blows my mind because I was totally stressed out all the time, running around like a chicken with my head cut off, because I didn't have a support system because we kept moving state to state. So I didn't have, local friends or family very often that were anywhere nearby. And so if you don't have that kind of a network, it was stressful, 40 years ago. So I can't even imagine now. But at the same time, parents are important. I mean, they're human beings that deserve a quality of life that is fulfilling, and their children deserve that. And I think everybody wants the absolute best outcome, but feeling guilty or ashamed or frustrated or angry or stressed is not the best way to achieve that level of quality of life for anybody involved. So I really hope that if you are in that state, and again, I have so much empathy for it. I can barely keep up with my life and it's just me. I can't imagine anymore. I just can't imagine it. But it's important that you check in with yourself.
Yeah.
Can you do something where you could feel happier and more relaxed, or at least less stressed? And where in the end, you'll be modeling that behavior for your children and help them not to feel so pressured and stressed.
Yeah. No, agree 100%. And you're worth it. So.
Yeah, definitely. All right. I hope all the parents that are listening take a deep breath and just realize there's hope. It's coming. It just may take a while.
Yeah. Yeah. I will say when I was in the thick of it, I mean, I still am. I'm still incredibly busy, but it was much busier before my daughter went off to school and my kids got into high school. Before high school, it just felt like, good Lord, it was constant. Yeah. And it does get easier. We struggled financially pretty bad for a while, and, we ended out okay, and it will get better, but you have to support yourself through it.
Again, just take that deep breath every time you feel stress rising, because it really helps you re-regulate. So when you breathe in, when you let the breath out, make the out breath a little longer than the in breath. That's going to turn on your parasympathetic system and help you relax. So you're using your body to help support you. That'll help you think more clearly, maybe respond instead of react. And, when you're in a good space, then you can assess your situation and figure out what would be the best thing for your own families, because it's your choice, and it should only be your choice, how you want to live and how you want to raise your kids. So we hope that helps. And thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. And you're all doing a great job.
This podcast is part of the Airwave Media Podcast Network. Visit airwavemedia.com to listen and subscribe to other great shows. Visit our website, amindfulmoment.com, to access podcasts, scripts, and reading recommendations. A Mindful Moment is hosted by Teresa McKee and Melissa Sims. This podcast is produced by Work to Live Productions. Thank you for tuning in.